We're getting closer to the finish line. Not really, actually we're quite far from the finish line. We still have the rear speakers to do in the back. We still have all the peripherals for the radio to go in. And of course running all the wires forward and connecting. Really it's a lot of work behind the radio and the rear speakers. So I mean I guess we're getting closer to the done mark?
No.
No?
No.
No, oh we still gotta put the subwoofer in the box.
Nope.
And then once all that is done, then we actually have to tune it. So, and the tune is you know, gains and whatnot, so that's gonna take some time. But we're pounding the clock here. I don't know if the puzzle makes any more sense, but here's where we're at. Let's start with what's gonna plug into the factory side here. We've ran our remote turn-on wire over to here because it is the speed wire. So now it comes from the main harness and loops all the way over to here. We added in our power and ground jumpers. Our relay is hanging off to the side. We have our first set of outputs. This is gonna be for the epicenter. We added in a fuse for that because this is a power going all the way to the back. So there's a fuse holder right here. We have our accessory power and ground for our backup camera. We have the brown OnStar trigger coming over to this. Now I wanted to point something out. That brown loop, how that works is that if you hit OnStar and you don't have an input on the unit, it's going to shut the unit down and then OnStar is going to talk. If you don't want that to happen, all you have to do is cut that brown loop wire, don't hook it up to anything, and instead of the radio losing power, the OnStar will just talk over the system. So that's up to you. We have our steering wheel control here, our antenna here, our chime module over here so we can move it wherever we want. These are our RCAs for the Pioneer radio. We split these off so we have our signal here, our backup camera and aux plug here, and then the stuff we're not going to be using on this side here. So everything is organized, zip tied, and where it needs to be. As you can see now, this is why we want all that room in the dash. They want you to that little hole. How is all this going to fit in that little hole? So we still have all this stuff that needs to go into the car. So we're gonna hop in and get this stuff all put in. So one of the other things we have to do to this kit is add in whether it has seat heaters or no seat heaters. And how you test for that is what's going on here. So this does not have seat heaters. So we want to grab the units that say blank. And they are marked left and right, so make sure you grab the right ones. This one says L and this one says R. Now because we have the non-seat heaters, there is an amendment on the last page here. And what it's telling you to do is lay them flush like this. And on the side, there's these little teeth that stick up. We need to remove all 3 of these teeth so that there's 4. We only need to remove 3 that stick up so that this will go in. For that, I'll just use my flush cutters. Now the reason why you don't have to do it on the seat heater ones is they don't have these. All right, now we got those removed. We'll go ahead and remove the little stop stickers off of this. And they are directional, meaning they have to go in a specific way. There's a little tooth here at the top that needs to line up with the input here. Now you do have to push fairly hard so that they go all the way in, and then you're all set. They should sit nice and flush just like the factories. And since we have both kits here, we'll go ahead and we'll remove these top clips. For that, we're just going to use a small flathead screwdriver, kind of work on one side. As you're lifting up, push down the terminal on the other side, and it'll pop out just like that. So lift up, push down in the center.
Alright, so what I did for my fuse holder, I grabbed 1/8 inch ABS. We have 2 factory bolts under the spare tire next to the battery. So what I did is heat up the plastic, take it to the car, and just push it in the form. Now we have this weird shape. I still have to put a razor in the bottom, and my fuse holder is gonna sit right there. And don't forget, in this type of fuse holder, pop the bottom side and tight the screws. So we have our 2 factory screws and then our factory clips are gonna hold it in place.
For Fernando just finished wiring up the fuse holder. Let's take a look at what we got. He went ahead and added some of the fuzzy side of the Velcro on the back of this so that it won't rattle. It's being held in place with this here and this here. The 5,000 zip ties we added should hold it in place rather well. Power wire is connected to the battery here. All we gotta do is put the cover back on. This of course will clear the tire, which is what we were worried about. So in case you guys were wondering, to change the speakers in the rear deck of this car, you have to pull pretty much from the running boards, meaning the side parts, back out of the car. So you're starting at the driver's and passenger doors floor sill. Those come out, and then you take out either side panel, then you take out either top panel, and then the rear deck will come out. And of course you have to take out the back seat. So the whole back of the car has to come out to get to these speakers. So when you're sitting there going, man, do I want to replace those? It's a commitment, that's for sure. So one of the last things on the list to do is wire up the subwoofer in the box. Let's go ahead and get this thing out of here. So we have a dual voice coil, 2 ohm driver, meaning this is 2 ohms here, this is 2 ohms here. We have 2 positives, we have 2 negatives. We need a 1 ohm load on our amplifier. So what we're gonna do is out of the speaker cup, we're gonna solder a pair of wires where the positives will go here and the negatives will go here. That's gonna give us our 1 ohm load on the amplifier. Let me go grab the speaker cup and I'll demonstrate. So the first thing you wanna do, if you're lucky enough like us to be using one of these boxes, is go ahead and put a pick tool in it and then tighten the screw on the back. You don't want these to be loose for any reason. Now that that's done, we're gonna grab 2 equal lengths of wire. We'll go ahead and strip the ends of the wire here. Go ahead and put some shrink wrap over it, line them up in place, and then we're gonna solder them on. Alright, so now we've soldered the whole connection all the way up to here. Go ahead and slide our heat shrink over. And since these wires are all going to the same place on the side, I'm gonna go ahead and add in some tape. Mainly just, they're just not flopping around inside of there. Okay, this harness is all set and ready to go into the box. Basically, it's gonna get wired just like this, where it goes positive, negative, and we're all good. We're finally to the position where we have everything done. The last big thing on the list was getting the subwoofer taken care of. We have the epicenter controller mounted over here where it's easy to get to. Now we just have to get everything into the dash. We've already tucked a ton of stuff. Like, you can't even see the brain anywhere because it's back up in there. Now we just need to plug the radio in, slide it into place, and do some testing. Which mic is this? This is one. So now we want to go and check our 4 corners. That sound, and it's the right sound in all 4 corners. That seems to be working good. Now, as far as the back ones are concerned, it's really hard to get up there and with the window and all that. We could test them from the underside. And what we're gonna be looking for is red, red, green instead of green, green, red, because the fronts are green, so we know we have to match that. So if we measure from the underside of the speaker, we should get the opposite because it's moving in the opposite direction from where we're measuring it. So we got red, red, green on both sides. All good there. We're moving along. Now that we have that done, we're gonna go ahead and unplug the speakers from the amplifier so that we can set up the gains, and then we'll do an auto EQ. Sound about right? Yep. Then we'll actually listen to it and do our tune. Cool. All right. We want to unplug the speaker wires. You never want to do one of these tests with the speaker wires plugged in. None whatsoever. And we've also bypassed the epicenter. So out of the radio, directly into the amplifiers, nothing connected to the output. So disconnect the subwoofer, disconnect all the speakers. You're just testing the amplifier's signal. That's it. All right, so first up on the list is the 4-channel. And we have the gains turned all the way down. The bass EQ still turned all the way down like we said at the beginning of the video. Fernando, go ahead and play 1000 Hertz 0 dB. And let's turn the volume up. Now what we're going to be checking for is the input clip on this, not the output clip. So there's little lights here at the top of the amplifier. They should light up red like it's doing right there. We got one on. Go ahead and turn it down one. Turn it up one. All right, so with it up one, we are getting a red light. As you can see, we have the red light. Go ahead and turn it down one. What volume number is that? 39. So 39 it is. Now we're gonna play a 0 dB 40 hertz track and see where this goes. What this is testing is how far we can turn the volume of the radio up before the volume of the radio starts to die out. So 39 is pretty good because it only goes up to 40. Let me know when you're ready. So we're not getting the same clip on the sub output of the radio, but we're gonna set it to this one, which is 39. So go ahead and turn it back down to 39. And let's play 1000 hertz test tone, -5 dB. And what that's gonna do is that's gonna give us what's called gain overlap. Not all music is created equal. So basically what we're doing is we're just giving the customer a little bit of wiggle room, as it were. Depending on what you're listening to, you can turn it up or you can turn it down. There again, you always have to keep listening with your ears for a little bit of distortion. You can leave it at 0 dB. The only problem with doing that is that some music is just not gonna have any of that to it because it's recorded a lot lower than some other music. Is that 39?
That's a 39.
All right, now I'm gonna start turning it up. All right, right there we have a blue light on, so we're good. I'm gonna switch to the other side. Red light's bad, we'll kick it back until we see that blue light. So we know right there the rear speakers are going to perform good because the blue light is on. But the rear speakers sounded a lot louder than the fronts, and typically I like to run the rears down some. So I'm gonna go ahead and back it down about 1/4. Now I could do that from the head unit, but I prefer to do it at the amplifier. Now we're gonna go ahead and set the sub amplifier the same way. We're gonna use -5. And the reason why we're gonna use -5, in some cases we'd use -10, but we're gonna use -5 because we have the epicenter, which is going to be delivering a lot of extra what it does to it. We don't want it to cause any unnatural problems. All right, so we have a blue light. We'll get that nice ugly red light that you can see there. We'll turn it back until it's blue. It's nice and blue. I'm gonna go on the, there, it's barely on. Now, because we are using the epicenter, we wanna make sure we leave the punch EQ off. We don't wanna use that for anything because the epicenter is gonna be doing all that fun and excitement. So we're done, that's it. That's all we have to do to set up the gain structure on the amplifiers. Now, for those of you guys that heard the term DD1 or whatnot, and you're like, hey, what's that? The DD1 is essentially an external device that does that same thing. A lot of amplifiers starting to come with similar technologies built into it. Rockford is one of them. All right, so now that we have the gain set up, we're gonna go ahead and plug the subwoofers and all the speakers back in, making sure to turn the volume all the way down, and actually go ahead and just turn it off, Fernando. And then we're gonna put in our test microphone, which is this guy right here from Pioneer. They make this. You're gonna hit eject on the CD player. There is an aux jack behind it. We're gonna go ahead and put that in and we'll set this thing up. As far as the crossovers go, the one nice thing about doing the auto EQ is it'll go ahead and set where it thinks those need to be. We have the amplifier set to 80, both high and low pass. We're gonna go back and adjust them once we get this done. Now, when setting up auto EQ, you want to have everything where it's going to be when the customer's in the car. So have the seat where the customer's going to put it, so you can put the microphone where his head's going to be. You want to make sure like the glove box closed. Everything is where it's supposed to be. That way it reads it properly. So now when you're at this point, we have everything put back together. It's ready to go. We're getting ready to start the test. Make sure you're in a quiet area. You don't want sirens and people talking and all that stuff. You gotta be quiet. So I'm gonna cut to the end because we really can't talk anymore. All right, the measurement is finished. We're all set and ready to go. So we'll go ahead and get the mic out of here. We still haven't put the dash on yet or the screws in. But now that we're at this point, I feel it's pretty safe that we can go ahead and get that part of the install done. And we'll finish our testing. The backup camera is still just loose, so we have to get that at the right angle. So we have an image. That's almost perfect. Actually, I'm gonna see if I can go down a little bit lower.
That's perfect.
Now, a couple helpful tips when installing a backup camera in a car. Two things. This is a GM, which means the engine has to be running in order for the reverse cameras to turn on, because the reverse lights only turn on when the engine is running. So don't freak out. Second thing, make sure that in the settings, it's turned on. Pioneer just started making that a feature to where they actually came on from the factory. They've always been off from the factory. Just like when we were testing, the subwoofer comes off from the factory. You actually have to go in and turn it on. Every manufacturer's got their little quirks a little bit different. We're gonna put the AC controls on, make sure they fit one last time, make sure the door opens and closes, and it's time to listen to it.
Yeah.
And I know what you're thinking. It's like, wow, all these steps, all these things, all this stuff you have to do. And it's like, yeah, one step leads to the next step, leads to the next step, leads to the next step. That's just how this goes. At the end, you don't want the mad dash to just get it out of the bay. You want to make sure you take your time and think everything through and make sure you haven't missed anything. That's key.
That's a key.
No, that's a microphone. All right, let's screw it in. We have it all back together. We got cool knobs and they're working. Now we're gonna switch sides. I'm gonna hop over on the driver's side and we'll take a look at how the auto EQ set this up. Now, one of the big misconceptions on the Pioneer Auto EQ is that it actually does something to the EQ. It doesn't do really anything for the physical EQ. It'll set up time correction and crossovers, but it's not touching the physical EQ. When you're done, it's still gonna be on powerful and it's still, you can play with it all you want. So the first thing we wanna look at is speaker level, and we can see here -2, -2, -7, -8. They have this set up to where they feel the rear is over loud and the front is just a little bit too loud as well. So what we can do is we can actually, if we want to set it back to 0, just subtract 2 from everything, and that will get us to where our gain stage that we decided we want will be set up. So we'll go ahead and we'll go 0, we'll go 0, 6, and 5. And of course the subwoofer is irrelevant. They always set that thing way too low. We'll go back here, we'll go to the crossover. They have the front set to 80, which is where we had it. They have the rear set to 125, which is odd because they're 6x9s. So we're just gonna go in and turn those both off. Our amp set to 80, and then we'll leave the subwoofer on. Now you have to leave the subwoofer on. You can turn it up, which is what we're gonna do because we're gonna be using the epicenter. We need to feed at least a 200 hertz and below frequency to that. But the reason why you have to leave it on is if you want time correction to work. Pioneer's algorithm is kind of strange, and if you turn off the subwoofer crossover in the past, it did weird things. So we'll just leave it on and turn it all the way up. So now that we have an idea of what they think it should sound like, we're gonna go ahead and listen to it. We still have the epicenter disconnected because my music that I'm gonna listen to really isn't gonna need it, but I just wanna test our music and then we'll listen to some of his music and then we'll bring back in the epicenter. So first things first, let's listen to some Maroon 5. Now, so it actually images pretty good, but I wanna see what the EQ is doing, so we're gonna go ahead and for this all we need is an iTest mic. Alright, we got it where we want it. Everything's sounding good. There was a couple rises that we wanted to level out just a little bit on the EQ. So it was like there was a big hump in the mid-range that was kind of funky sounding. So we brought down that. Sounds much better now. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna plug back in the epicenter, and I'm going to hop out of the seat because I need to have Fernando sit here because the type of music that they're listening to is more his speed than mine. I'm gonna have to go back there and adjust it and get it to where we want it. Alright, so as you can surmise, the music that this gentleman listens to is Latin music. Latin music typically doesn't have a strong bass note, and that was one of the concerns when we were building the system, was that we wanted to make sure there was tons of deep bass. Tons of deep bass. That's why we sold them the epicenter, and epicenter does this. So it's great for this type of music as well as 70s and 80s rock music that doesn't have it. So to give you guys an example, in case you didn't hear it, we're gonna play a song and we're gonna turn the volume up and down on it. Now, if you wanna see how to set up an epicenter, there's a whole video we filmed on just setting up an epicenter. So go ahead, it's in the audio control playlist, check that out. We just wanna hear it now, so press play. No sound. No epicenter. So as you can see, adding the epicenter will really just
boost it up.
I used to have an Aphex big bottom oral exciter. Same basic principle, but for your house. I used it for movies. Back when Dolby Digital or Dolby Pro Logic first came out, and you only had like the 0.1 subwoofer thing.
Wow. Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah, I used to play with those.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, the logo was a butt.
No.
I think I still have it in the closet. Had to be real careful on the highs side because it would just launch your speakers. The Morels were kind of scary when I kept that low, but man, I pounded this up. The only thing we have left to do is cover the amplifiers back up in the back. Ooh, you know what we should do? You know what we haven't done?
Film the subwoofer.
Film the subwoofer. All right, we're gonna end the show with filming the subwoofer. Thank you so much for watching as always.
On to the next one, guys.
Definitely. All right, pop the trunk.